What Michael did to the fallen angels and their wives. Divine justice unveiled the consequences when the realms of heaven and earth collide. What happens when the supernatural intersects with the human world? In today's video, we're delving into one of the Bible's most mysterious and captivating topics, the story of the fallen angels, their wives, and the formidable Archangel Michael. This tale is one of defiance, divine judgment, and cosmic warfare, one that many have heard of, but few truly grasp. It carries profound spiritual significance for us today. If you've ever read Genesis 6:1-4, you've likely encountered a passage that raises more questions than it answers. It speaks of the sons of God who took wives from the daughters of men, resulting in the birth of the Nephilim. But who were these sons of God? Why did angels choose to marry human women? What were the consequences of this union, and how does Michael the Archangel factor into the story? While the Bible does not provide every detail, it offers enough to glimpse into one of the most astonishing and chilling narratives of the spiritual realm. When we think of angels, we often envision radiant beings, messengers sent by God. However, Genesis presents a much darker reality. These sons of God, widely believed to be fallen angels or watchers, defied divine order, descending to earth and choosing human wives. From this union came the Nephilim, a race of giants that corrupted the world. But who were these angels, and what drove them to transgress the boundaries between heaven and earth? More importantly, what does their story mean for us today? As we unravel this mystery, we must also focus on a key figure in this cosmic conflict, Michael the Archangel. Known as God's warrior and defender, Michael plays a pivotal role in this divine confrontation. Through his actions, we witness divine justice unfold, revealing God's plan to restore order in a world shrouded in sin. Michael did not stand idly by while this rebellion occurred. He took decisive action, and in his intervention, we can find powerful lessons for our own lives. So, prepare for an in-depth exploration of one of the Bible's most enigmatic, compelling, and powerful stories. By the end of this video, you'll gain not only a deeper understanding of Michael's role in the judgment of the fallen angels, but also a fresh perspective on how this ancient story resonates with our lives today. This is a journey into the heart of biblical truth. Let's dive in. 1. The fallen angels. Who were they? Before examining Michael's actions against the wives of the fallen angels, we must first understand who these angels were. The Bible briefly mentions them in Genesis 6:1 plus 404, but their origins run much deeper. These beings were not ordinary angels. They belonged to a divine order, yet something went terribly wrong. As sons of God, they defied divine law, descending to earth and taking human wives. But who were they, and what caused their downfall? To answer this, we must start at the beginning. Lucifer. Isaiah 14:12 and 15 and Ezekiel 28:12-19 describe Lucifer as once being a magnificent, high-ranking angel in God's heavenly court. Created in perfection, his pride led him to rebel, seeking to elevate himself above God. In his defiance, he was cast out of heaven. But Lucifer was not alone. Many angels followed his rebellion, becoming fallen beings bound to earth. Among these fallen ones were the Watchers, angels who were not merely disobedient but willfully defiant. Genesis 6 introduces another group of angels, the sons of God. While some interpretations suggest these were human descendants of Seth, ancient Jewish writings and biblical scholars argue that they were, in fact, fallen angels. This is where the story takes an intriguing turn. These angels, consumed by unnatural desire, abandoned their heavenly domain and descended to earth, where they took human wives. The Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text not included in the biblical canon but respected in many traditions, provides a clearer depiction of these watchers. Under the leadership of Azazel, they violated divine boundaries, not only marrying human women, but also bestowing forbidden knowledge upon humanity. They taught the crafting of weapons, the use of cosmetics, and other secrets meant to remain within the divine realm. This was not a mere act of disobedience. It was a deliberate, calculated attempt to corrupt God's creation. These angels did not simply fall from grace. They actively sought to reshape the world in defiance of divine order. Their actions had dire consequences, not just for themselves, but for all of humanity. 2. The Nephilim, the giants of the Bible. Now we arrive at one of the most enigmatic aspects of this story, the Nephilim. Genesis 6:04 states, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by." For centuries, scholars, theologians, and readers of the Bible have been captivated by the mystery of the Nephilim. The term is often translated as giants in many Bible versions, but its Hebrew root, enplel, means to fall or to be cast down. Some scholars believe the Nephilim were beings with a fallen nature, either due to their angelic lineage or as a result of their corruption. Regardless of the exact meaning, it is clear that the Nephilim were no ordinary human. The most widely accepted interpretation, based on Genesis and other ancient texts, is that the Nephilim were hybrid offspring, born from the union of fallen angels and human women. These beings were not only gigantic in stature, but also in influence and corruption. The Book of Enoch describes them as wicked creatures who consumed human labor, implying that they were not just physically imposing but morally depraved as well. Their existence was a distortion of God's creation, a fusion of the divine and the human that was never meant to occur. Yet these Nephilim were not merely monstrous in form, they were revered. Some saw them as mighty heroes, even demigods, men of renown. Their strength, wisdom, and leadership made them legendary figures. However, their presence signified something far more sinister. The Bible portrays them as contributors to the moral collapse that led to the Great Flood. Their influence drove entire generations to forsake God's ways, embracing evil instead. As the Nephilim's power and influence spread, the world plunged deeper into chaos. The actions of the fallen angels and their offspring had corrupted the earth beyond redemption. Genesis 6:5 states, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." The Nephilim were not just an anomaly. They were the embodiment of angelic rebellion. Their existence signaled that humanity had reached a point of no return, prompting God to cleanse the earth with the flood. This devastating descent into corruption set the stage for Michael the Archangel's intervention. As we proceed, we will uncover how Michael's role in this cosmic struggle ensured that divine justice prevailed. Through his actions, God sent an undeniable message. No being, not even the mightiest angels or their monstrous offspring, could defy his authority without facing judgment. Now that we understand the rebellion of the fallen angels and the chaos they unleashed on earth, it's time to shift our focus to one of the most significant figures in the Bible, Michael the Archangel. Michael is a central character in both the Old and New Testaments, often depicted as a warrior leading the heavenly armies against the forces of evil. But who exactly is Michael, and why is he so vital to this story? Michael is first introduced in the book of Daniel, where he is identified as one of God's chief angels. In Daniel 10:13, he is described as the protector of Israel, standing against the forces of darkness and aiding God's people in times of trouble. However, Michael's role extends beyond that of a messenger or servant. He is a mighty warrior whose mission is to defend God's people and execute divine will, particularly in spiritual warfare. In Daniel 12:01, Michael is depicted as the angel who will rise during the Great Tribulation, protecting God's people in the end times. Yet Michael's influence is not confined to the earthly realm. He plays a crucial role in the cosmic battle between good and evil. In the New Testament, Revelation 12:7 describes a great war in heaven, where Michael and his angels fight against the dragon, Satan, and his fallen angels. The outcome of this battle is Michael's triumph, resulting in Satan and his followers being cast out of heaven and thrown to earth. Michael is portrayed as the commander of God's angelic army, a divine warrior who stands against all opposition to God's kingdom. Michael's role as a warrior goes beyond combating evil in the heavens. He is also an enforcer of divine justice. Through Michael, God's judgment is carried out, whether in battles against spiritual forces or dealings with rebellious angels. This brings us to why Michael is so essential in the story of the fallen angels. When these angels chose to abandon their rightful place and corrupt the earth, it was Michael who delivered God's judgment upon them. His actions were not just about enforcing the boundaries of heaven, but also about preserving the order that God had established from the beginning. As we examine Michael's story within the context of the fallen angels, we see a display of divine authority in action. Michael was not passive. He was an active participant in God's plan to confront evil and restore justice. Through his strength, obedience, and unwavering commitment, God's ultimate purposes for the earth are fulfilled. Number 4. The Bible's cryptic reference to the wives of the fallen angels. Having established Michael's role as a warrior and divine enforcer, we now turn to one of the Bible's greatest mysteries, the wives of the fallen angels. What does Scripture actually say about these unions? The key passage to examine is Genesis 6:1-4, a brief yet enigmatic text that has puzzled scholars and theologians for centuries. It states, "When human beings began to multiply on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, 'My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown.'" But who are the sons of God and the daughters of men? Many biblical scholars agree that the sons of God refer to fallen angels, also known as the Watchers. The notion that angels could marry human women is unsettling and raises many questions. Since angels are spiritual beings, how could they physically unite with humans? The key to understanding this lies in recognizing that these angels did not merely fall passively. They actively chose to leave their heavenly domain, abandon their spiritual calling, and engage in forbidden acts with human women. The Bible does not provide extensive details on how this occurred, but Jewish tradition and texts like the Book of Enoch elaborate on the story. According to these ancient writings, a group of fallen angels led by Azazel descended to earth and took wives from among human women, producing hybrid offspring, the Nephilim. These angels did not take human wives merely for companionship, they imparted forbidden knowledge. The Book of Enoch describes how fallen angels introduced humanity to secrets that were meant to remain hidden. They taught women how to craft cosmetics, forge weapons, and practice sorcery, thereby corrupting the natural order that God had intended. This was not just about intermarriage, it was a deliberate act of corruption, an attempt by the fallen angels to defile God's creation at its core. By marrying human women and fathering children, they sought to alter the very essence of humanity. The Nephilim, giant hybrid beings, were born into a world already tainted by sin. These creatures were neither fully human nor fully angelic, and their existence contributed to a world spiraling into deeper corruption. If you're wondering how this connects to Michael, the answer is critical. It was through Michael that God would act to restore order. The fallen angels had violated divine law, and Michael, as the warrior archangel, was the one who would confront them. However, before examining Michael's role in this drama, it is essential to understand the widespread consequences of these unions. Corruption spread throughout the earth, and this evil provoked God's judgment through the Great Flood, which wiped out all of creation except for Noah and his family. Number 5. Michael's role in the judgment of the fallen angels. Now that we comprehend the depth of the fallen angels' rebellion and the corruption they unleashed, we can better grasp why Michael the Archangel plays such a pivotal role. The actions of the fallen angels and their hybrid offspring, the Nephilim, pushed the world to the brink of destruction. Their deliberate disobedience set off a chain reaction that required divine intervention, and Michael, the mighty warrior, was the one chosen to execute that intervention. Although the Bible does not provide a detailed narrative of Michael's actions against the fallen angels, we can infer his role through various scriptural references. In Jude 1:6 it is written, "And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day." Here we see that God's judgment on these angels was both decisive and severe. They had defied divine order and as a result faced inevitable punishment. Michael's involvement was crucial in carrying out this judgment. In Jude 1:9, we see Michael directly contending with Satan over the body of Moses, demonstrating his authority to engage in spiritual warfare against even the highest-ranking fallen angels. Michael does not act on his own, but follows God's divine instructions to combat evil. While the Bible does not explicitly describe Michael's confrontation with the fallen angels who married human women, we can conclude from biblical context that he was the one enforcing God's judgment upon them. The fallen angels sought to corrupt the earth, and Michael, as a heavenly warrior, was instrumental in their defeat and binding. The apocryphal Book of Enoch further expands on this, portraying Michael as the one who leads the charge against the fallen angels, binding Azazel and casting him into the abyss. Michael's role here is both symbolic and practical. He is God's appointed enforcer, ensuring that the rebellion of these angels does not go unpunished. Michael's actions were not merely about vengeance. They were about restoring divine order. When these angels defied God's boundaries, they did not just sin against natural law, they challenged the very structure of creation. As God's warrior and messenger, Michael played a key role in restoring balance, demonstrating that divine justice is both merciful and exacting. Addressing the fallen angels who sinned by taking human wives is just one aspect of a much larger spiritual conflict that has persisted since Lucifer's rebellion. The Bible makes it clear that an ongoing battle rages in the heavenly realms between the forces of good and evil. Michael, as God's chief warrior, leads the charge in this struggle, ensuring that God's ultimate plan of salvation is carried out, even if it means facing the darkest adversary. In Revelation 12:7-9, we witness a powerful glimpse into this eternal struggle between Michael and Satan. Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was cast down to the earth, and his angels with him. This passage is significant because it highlights the vast cosmic battle in which Michael plays a crucial role. He is not merely contending with a few fallen angels, he is waging war against Satan himself and his entire army. This spiritual war has spanned the entirety of creation's history. Satan's objective has always been to challenge God's authority and mislead humanity. But Michael stands as God's champion, the defender of divine order. When Satan attempted to instigate rebellion in heaven, Michael led the heavenly host in battle, and as Revelation tells us, he triumphed. Satan and his followers were expelled from heaven and cast down to the earth. When considering Michael's role in the judgment of the fallen angels who married human women, we must recognize that this event was part of a much larger and ongoing spiritual conflict. The rebellion of these angels was not an isolated event. It was a major transgression against the divine order and contributed to a greater spiritual crisis. Michael's intervention was aligned with God's plan to purge evil from the world, one act of judgment at a time. This cosmic battle also has consequences on earth. The actions of the fallen angels triggered the flood, a catastrophic judgment upon a corrupt world. Yet even amid destruction, God's mercy was evident. Noah, who found favor with God, was spared, and through his lineage the hope of restoration endured. Michael, as both an instrument of judgment and a protector of God's people, serves as a reminder that evil will not go unpunished. Even when darkness seems overwhelming, God's plan will ultimately prevail. The imprisonment of the fallen angels and their offspring, the Nephilim, signified the beginning of the end for the forces of evil. Their defeat, orchestrated by Michael, demonstrates God's sovereignty over all creation. No rebellion, no matter how powerful or far-reaching, can stand against his will. This event is both a warning and a promise. Evil will be judged, and God's justice will always triumph. Application for today. What lessons can we take from Michael's story? How do the events surrounding the fallen angels apply to us now? It's easy to see these ancient accounts as distant, disconnected events, but they carry profound, timeless truths that remain just as relevant today. One of the key lessons from Michael's example is the importance of living with purpose. Michael was not passive or hesitant. He acted with unwavering obedience to God's will, even when facing formidable enemies. Similarly, we are called to live with boldness and faithfulness, standing firm in our convictions. Michael's story encourages us to be proactive in our spiritual lives, resisting evil and standing for righteousness, rather than remaining idle while corruption takes root. Another crucial lesson from Michael's story is the reality of spiritual warfare. While we may not physically battle fallen angels as Michael did, Scripture makes it clear that we are engaged in a spiritual struggle every day. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Michael's role in the heavenly conflict reminds us that our battle is not merely physical, it is deeply spiritual. Whether resisting temptation, upholding justice, or protecting our communities from harm, we all have a part to play in this ongoing war. Just as Michael was a guardian and defender, we too are called to safeguard the spiritual well-being of those around us and to stand against the forces that seek to corrupt God's creation. Perhaps the most reassuring message from Michael's story is that God's timing is perfect. Looking at the flood and the judgment of the fallen angels, one might see these events as harsh or unsettling. However, Michael's actions remind us that God's justice is carried out precisely at the right time. Even when it appears that evil is winning, God's plan unfolds according to His divine will, and His victory is assured. This should give us confidence in our own struggles, knowing that God is in control and that His justice will prevail. Michael's story also serves as a reminder that evil does not go unpunished. The rebellious angels and their Nephilim offspring believed they could escape judgment, but God saw everything. No sin is hidden and no rebellion is ignored. Romans 2:6 states, "God will repay each person according to what they have done." In a world filled with injustice, corruption, and wrongdoing, Michael's story reassures us that divine justice is certain. It is not our responsibility to take vengeance or right every wrong. That is God's role, and He will bring justice in His perfect timing. Conclusion. Reflecting on Michael's actions in the judgment of the fallen angels and the broader spiritual battle, we gain a deeper understanding of sin's consequences, the reality of evil, and the certainty of God's justice. However, beyond that, we learn that even amid darkness, we can trust in God's sovereignty. He has not abandoned His creation. He is actively working to restore it, and He calls us to join Him in that mission. Like Michael, we are called to live with purpose and obedience. We are to take part in the spiritual battle around us, standing firm in faith and protecting the vulnerable from the forces of darkness. Above all, we are reminded to trust in God's timing and justice. Even when evil appears to thrive and the world seems chaotic, we can rest in the assurance that God reigns supreme. The victory has already been won through Christ, and in the end, His justice will prevail. If there is one takeaway from this story, it is that there is hope. Despite the rebellion of the fallen angels, despite the corruption they brought into the world, and despite the continued influence of dark forces today, God's purposes will never be thwarted. He is working all things together for good, and He will bring ultimate justice and restoration. As we consider this profound biblical account, I encourage you to reflect on Michael's role. not only in confronting the rebellious angels, but in demonstrating what it means to be a faithful warrior for God's kingdom. The battle between good and evil continues, but we are not alone. Just as Michael fought with God's power at his side, we too can stand strong, knowing that God is with us in every struggle, great or small. If you found this discussion insightful, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more content like this. Share this with others who may benefit from these lessons, and leave a comment below with your thoughts on Michael's role in this cosmic battle. What does his example teach you about your own spiritual journey? I'd love to hear your reflections. Thank you for watching, and remember, God's justice is always at work, and his victory over evil is certain.